Welcome to the Member Engagement Show, the podcast for association professionals, brought to you by Higher Logic. I'm your host, Kelly Whelan, and in each episode, we'll talk to guests whose expertise will help you gain new members, boost retention, and deepen member involvement, all goals that can transform your organization. I invite you to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode, and visit us at higherlogic.com/podcasts to catch the best of past episodes. Now, let's start the show.
Welcome back to the Member Engagement Show. Today, I'm excited to have Andrea Wieters and Jennifer McNelly on the show. Andrea is the Director of Strategic and Future-Focused Research for the ASAE Research Foundation, and Jennifer is the CEO of the American Society of Safety Professionals. They both work on ASAE's ForesightWorks, a program focused on major trend analysis and forecasting to equip associations and their volunteer leaders for effective environmental scanning and planning for change. ForesightWorks offers continuous strategic intelligence on drivers of change in the association industry, practical tools, and engagement opportunities. So I'm really delighted to kick off 2025 by having Andrea and Jennifer on the show today to talk about some of the key drivers of change associations should consider as they plan for the future. To start us off, Andrea and Jennifer, can you tell our listeners a little more about yourselves and your work?
Thank you so much for having us today, Kelly. As the Director of Strategic and Future-Focused Research in ASAE Research Foundation, I lead a team of dedicated both volunteers and staff to explore emerging trends, looking at environmental scanning, and really exploring future challenges that associations might face. So our goal is to provide actionable insights that help associations navigate the evolving landscape and make informed decisions. So this involves a mix of both qualitative and quantitative research, stakeholder engagement, and strategic planning.
Great.
And Kelly, I'm so excited to be here, and Andrea, to support you in your efforts. So I am a volunteer leader that is actively engaged both in the practice of ForesightWorks and in guiding the strategic direction and use of ForesightWorks among professional association leaders. I often describe myself as a bit of a unicorn in this space. I found my way to leadership as a professional in the association space, but I have a unique blend of public, private, and nonprofit in my background. And my journey in foresight personally, I lead with a strategic mindset that looks at data and what's going on in tomorrow. I'm a Clifton Strengths coach, and strategic and futuristic are among my top. But my initial exposure to ForesightWorks actually started through the World Economic Forum when I chaired a Global Agenda Council on the Future of Manufacturing. So a very practical experience back in about 2010, 2012. When I became the CEO of the American Society of Safety Professionals in August of 2018, my first introduction with the board was around the impact of trends and what it means for associations. So ASSP has been actively engaged in evidence-based, data-driven trend analysis since about 2018. And I'm really excited to share our journey today and what that means for other leaders looking to have impactful drivers of change within their organizations.
That's excellent. Well, thank you both so much for coming on the show. I think this is going to be a super interesting conversation for me personally, and also for all of our listeners to hear a little bit more about the drivers of change and some of the ways that they can actionize them. I don't know if actionize is a word, actually. But Andrea, could you give listeners a little more detail about ASAE's Research Foundation and ForesightWorks, so kind of orient people to the work?
Yeah, definitely. So the ASAE Research Foundation is part of the ASAE enterprise, and we're dedicated to advancing knowledge and understanding within the association community. We focus on conducting research that address the most pressing challenges and opportunities facing associations today and in the future. One of our flagship initiatives is this ForesightWorks program. So for me, one of the most rewarding aspects is seeing our research make tangible difference. When associations use our insights to implement new strategies or improve their operations, it does validate the hard work and dedication that our team, including volunteers like Jennifer, what we put into that to make sure that we're having those actionable insights. So it's fulfilling to know that we're contributing to the success and sustainability of not just associations themselves, but the association community, the industry and professions that they represent. And just a little bit about ForesightWorks, the program. So it's a comprehensive collection of tools and resources that's designed to help associations anticipate and prepare for future disruptions. ForesightWorks is managed by a dedicated volunteer task force. As I mentioned before, Jennifer serves as the vice chair, which I'm very excited about. But all of this task force and the work with our association professionals, they bring together diverse perspectives and also expertise to ensure that the project remains relevant and impactful. ForesightWorks does include a variety of resources that includes reports on trends, scenario planning guides, strategic planning tools. These resources are designed to help association leaders understand those emerging trends, assess their potential impact, and develop strategies to navigate future challenges. We employ and leverage our futurists from Foresight Alliance. So these are folks whose research is dedicated to understanding how the future may unfold based on looking at certain trends, doing environmental scanning, and really dedicating their entire lives to understanding how the world can be changing and challenging, specifically associations in the world to come.
I love that because I feel like one of the things we always call out with Higher Logic's proprietary reports where we pull data from our customer base, it's anonymized data. Just want to call that out. But when we pull data to put together, for example, our email benchmark report and our community benchmark report, we always call out that data is really helpful and looking at your own data is really helpful. But you do want to remember that that's backward looking. You're looking at what happened before. And yes, it can give you insights for moving forward because you can kind of see what strategies am I using that are going to help me. But I think this is such an important other piece of how you plan for the future where yes, you should look at what has happened before and what has had an impact for your members, but then you also have to be kind of looking ahead because you're not going to have I would say my former association, we're not going to necessarily have the data that you all are able to pull together from ASAE ForesightWorks. And that's why this is so helpful then, because it's well, we didn't have the forward-looking stuff. So this is really helpful to give us that insight. So Jennifer, I wonder if you have examples.
Oh my gosh, Kelly, I'm going to set you up. Here's what that really looks like. And again, our journey has been long and we were not as mature then as we are today. But I'm going to draw it down to how my team uses your data. And this is not a sales plug. This is literally what happened in a report I got from my head of digital marketing a couple of weeks ago. So from a context perspective, and I'm going to have a CEO mindset today. I think that's important for others to understand. And I'm going to lean into my CAE role. Our responsibility as CEOs is to be at the strategic level of an organization and to influence down and up to the board of directors. So I'll come back to 2018, newbie showed up. Hello, here I am. And my first board of directors meeting, and I recommend do not do this. I pulled all the drivers of change and then I filtered them down to 24 and I took them to the board as pre-read and said, hey, read these. The action briefs are incredible. They are tools that say what is going on, what data supports it, and what should we talk about as a board. I mean, it gives you the complete roadmap in that. 24 is a lot. But, my board likes detail. So what we found in the conversations, if you're looking at kind of the big drivers, there are sub-themes that emerge in that. And in that particular very first one, and it links to one of the new drivers around, this multi-generational influence in workforce development. Automation, AI, and workforce development were all things they said, these all kind of a connect for us. So that's kind of one level at the very top. Subsequent to that, and I share this story all the time, so we are a health and safety organization. Our mission is make work safe for everybody. So the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, part of the Center for Disease Control, does all the federal research around the impact of health and safety in work. The year after we launched our efforts, they came out with a foresight project that looked at the change in the world of work. What does it mean for work, workplace, and workforce? And Kelly, I could drop a link in there. But that to me became the solidifying validation of the world of work is changing, and every association CEO needs to understand that. And it's changing in an accelerated pace. And with our lens, every journey is unique, but we could back map the questions in there into, if the world of work is changing, what does it mean? So, trend data, government data, to your point on sources. We then went and looked at society data and what members were saying to us. And we looked at leading and lagging indicators. So to your point and your report being backward. So 5 years later, and I got at the beginning of the year a complete analysis of our digital marketing against the drivers of change from our analyst. I know what we've done and how it's performing towards how and where we're going, because we're really clear on the intersection of future-looking action and performance and impact it has today. So it ends up with individual data and what are you doing? But you have to have, you're absolutely right, you have to have that framing up front. And the other thing for us is, and I think this is, again, a CAE CEO competency, is a systems-based approach. And what does that mean? My manufacturing hat kicks in, and it's a plan, do, check, act. You plan for change, you act against change, you check change, and you adjust change. And that, to me, in the framing of ForesightWorks, brings it full circle to this role is never done. You're always looking at information to tweak what it is you're doing at the day-to-day level based on the information you have and what you see as the most important drivers of change as your association is positioned in the marketplace.
I love your example because I feel like there are those of us that are data geeks. Like, I like looking at reports just because I find them super interesting. But you also called out some really good points about then looking for ways to use that, because there are some folks that, again, like us, they're just like, this is so interesting, I want to read it. And then I know there are other folks who are like, either I don't have time or I'm not that interested. But I think the important part is recognizing this is something that can then impact your strategies that you take at a strategic level and then even at a day-to-day level. So I think that's really important. And I want to pick up on something you mentioned in what you were saying. I know that ForesightWorks unveiled some new drivers of change in August of 2024 based on the trends that you were seeing in your analysis. And I wonder if either of you could tell listeners a little bit more about those new ones.
Sure. Andrea, how about I start and you supplement? Because Kelly, I do want to give you a very concrete example. So let's talk about the influence of AI. That's not a new technology, but it's change and pace. So this is the first year through ForesightWorks we've sort of aggregated up. And I'll link it to the workforce development, Gen Z. Every one of these drivers is interconnected to something else. We came in through our journey with the world is changing, what members expect of us are changing, so we need to act and be responsive to what members are thinking. We've used it as a governance tool in strategic planning that has redirected how we look at our foundation, as an example. It supported a significant governance transition because we needed to be more agile and responsive to members based on these drivers, including the expectations of the next generation to have information a different way. We managed to transition our governance structure and move our House of Delegates into an advisory group because we needed to move faster as a board. So within those drivers, what people and the emerging professionals expect an association to deliver links directly to AI. And what are the challenges with it? What are the expectations? What does it mean for business operations? All the things that then connect what people want and expect in the use of information and what our responsibility is as association leaders to ethical use and quality data. So it's exciting to see that particular set come out because it's really connected. Andrea, from your perspective, I'd love to hear, what does that mean?
Yeah, so what Jennifer is referring to, when we had the new drivers of change, they were focused on 3 on AI. So AI and intellectual property. So really understanding how advances in AI are transforming IP laws and practices and what you can do to protect yourself as an association, also your members. And then what does need to be out there so that is behind a member wall, behind a firewall, something like that, so that you can protect everything that's your intellectual property. We also looked at AI and learning. So we're looking at that evolving relationship between AI and educational methods. And then finally, when we're looking at that trifecta of new drivers on AI, it's preventing AI risks and harms. So what are those strategies for mitigating potential risks and those ethical concerns associated with AI technologies? We know that AI is a new era in human development, but the problems or the challenges and issues are not new. So putting those lenses on top of how a new technology or a new challenge to how we do our work is still bringing up old ideas and old issues that need to be solved, especially when we're looking at ethical issues. So this is now just bringing a new lens, as Jennifer was saying earlier, on top of existing problems. And we also like to say that when we're talking about our drivers of change, they are forward looking. So we know AI is here. AI has been around since the little paper clip on WordPerfect or whatever it was called a long time ago. Clippy, I think his name was. So AI has been around forever.
I love it.
Right?
Sorry, as a millennial myself, like the little paperclip lives rent free in my brain.
Exactly. Like, I don't know if I could put that there. Let me see what Clippy says. So AI has been around forever. So we're not introducing new concepts with drivers of change. What we're saying is that these concepts are going to only impact associations and the industries and professions that you represent over the next 5, 10, 15 years at a larger scale. So we could have something that when we're looking at trends, as you mentioned earlier, Kelly, trends are something that could be looking backwards or what's happening right now. The drivers of change will be looking at what's going to continue to happen and be more impactful moving forward. So that's what we're looking at for all of those AI drivers. We also looked at exploring emerging Gen Z and the characteristics of that generation that would be a little bit new. And what does that look like and how that's disrupting the workforce, as well as the talent drought. So addressing those growing challenges of talent shortages and some strategies for attracting and retaining skilled professionals. We believe all of these are interconnected. We know that Gen Z, they're going to be AI natives. They are AI natives, and they need to understand that the problems or challenges that are being brought up by AI today are not new problems and challenges, but there is, as we mentioned before, that lens that goes on top of it. And the talent drought. The world is changing, and it's changing at a remarkable pace, and it's changing at a flurry these days. So we need to understand what does need to be set up in order to have a proper pipeline development. So all of that goes into play for folks like Jennifer when they're trying to think of how do we then help our association and our members when we're looking specifically at workforce issues and workforce challenges. So just wanted to add on to that those are some of the lenses that we're looking at for our new drivers of change this past August.
I love that because I think sometimes, and I feel like I was just talking to my boss about this literally yesterday, AI can be like a really overwhelming topic to try to think about how you want to approach it or what you need to think about for your organization because it's so vast, because there are AI tools across so many different areas of work. And there's so many different AI tools, even within one, like you have so many different chatbots, so many different image generators, so many different text generators, et cetera, that it can feel really overwhelming when you think of it on that really broad scope. And I love that the 3 AI sections that you mentioned in the drivers of change, I love that they like distill down some of the areas with AI that someone might want to focus on, because I think that really helps you figure out like, I don't have to just absorb and figure out how to deal with AI in this like broad, ambiguous blob that it is. I can actually focus in on a couple specific areas where I know it could potentially impact my association or my members. And I think that's really helpful as associations try to figure out like, how do we want to deal with AI and what do we need to worry about? And I'm always a big proponent of like the emerging generation discussions too, because I think not only do you have to be aware of like the emerging Gen Z and like what they're looking for, both as association members and potentially association staff, I think you also want to think about like how that impacts like everybody in the workforce, because you're adding like a new element to the dynamics of a workforce. So like I know my colleague Sarah went to a conference that literally talked about that. Like, okay, if you have all these like different generations in the workforce, what are the interplays of that when you're all working together, because certain people have certain proficiencies and certain people have areas that they're really good at, and you want to make sure that you're incorporating all of that to really succeed as an organization. So really love all of those new drivers of change that are added. I do know, even though those are the newest drivers of change, I think there are like 50 other drivers of change total. And I wonder if you could, give folks like an overview of what some of those focus areas are.
Yeah, when Jennifer was talking earlier about that, I only gave the board 24. That's half of the drivers of change. So it's like that with a grain of salt if you're trying to present it strategically to your board.
Do not do that. Do not do that.
It can be overwhelming. So pretty sure understand what you can and cannot handle. But when we're looking at when the program was first developed, we wanted to separate our different drivers of change into domains or thematic areas. And that ended up being about 6 different thematic areas. When you look at it, it could say, we could be thinking, oh, these are silos, and maybe that this is one thematic area. And for instance, when I was talking earlier about AI and learning, you could think, oh, well, that could go under, for example, the data and technology thematic area. We purposefully put it under content, learning, and knowledge, because we know that that is going to impact content, learning, and knowledge more so maybe than data and technology, even though that technology is the leverage point. These thematic areas include content, learning, and knowledge, data and technology, as I mentioned before, demographics and membership, economic conditions, society and politics, and workforce and workplace. These are pretty common areas that were more specifically curated for associations. So when we're looking at the different areas that associations work in, so we're thinking about member engagement. When we're thinking about developing new products, programs, and services for our members, you can look at these different thematic areas and say, hey, I'm really concerned about what the different demographics are going to look like for our membership moving forward. So let me just look at the different thematic area of demographics and memberships and say, is there something in here? Is there a different driver of change that I think is going to be more impactful to our association now and in the future than maybe something else? So if just keeping on the lines of demographics and membership, for example, there's something that we have there, it's immigration-driven demography. That's going to be big pretty soon, and if not already soon, and it will continue to be big. We also put volunteering under that because cultural, demographic, and technology changes, they're altering the volunteer experience. So when you're looking at the different thematic areas, you can understand where the drivers of change may impact different subsect of an association, but they also cross borders. So when we're thinking also, like we mentioned before, volunteering, technology changes. That now goes back to data and technology and how AI may be impacting your membership and your industry profession that you serve.
And Kelly, I want to see if I can't make that real on what does it do to a CEO's mindset and give 2 very concrete examples. Back to the what not to do. The way, don't do it. Although, it was a great introduction, and I'll tell you the benefit of having done that in February of 2019. And one of the drivers around, funny enough, I was almost laughed out of the room, virtual meeting. So there is a driver around that was a discussion point in February of 2019. So I'll put a stake in the ground around that. So there had been conversations that had occurred. So as a CEO, my mindset is, what problem am I trying to solve in what period of time, and how do I ready for the really hard work boards of directors need to do? Because change is hard, and their job is hard, and they're volunteers, but you need their leadership guiding to meet the needs of the professionals. So I wake up and what's the problem I'm trying to solve, and how does Foresight help me do that? So let's go back to February 2019, virtual meetings. Oh, Jennifer, don't change our conference, and COVID hits. We pivot, and our location for conference was Orlando, and they were testing in the parking lot. We flipped our conference to the point of production in a virtual environment, having discussed expectations of membership and what they would want and need from us in a virtual environment in 6 weeks. We knew what we wanted, because though we didn't think it was going to happen today, we had had conversations about it. There never would have been, I say that there may have been, I don't know, but because we did have those conversations, everybody was comfortable with the pivot we made and the impact that had financially for us as an association. Very concrete outcome associated with that influence.
Yeah, and you were able to do it quicker. I understand there were other organizations that may not have had those conversations prior, and they still were able to pivot, and I think that's amazing. I imagine it was harder and not as fast for them to do it if they hadn't had those conversations in advance, because they had to do the research that you had sort of already done.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We could assure the board that the components of member expectation and what they wanted and expected in that environment could be met to the best of our ability trying something new. The other is the work that we have done around all these data points being connected and member expectations. As Andrea has said, there's workplace, links to content, links to. It required that our board reevaluate our membership model, and that launched this year. So real business decisions. The other thing we used this to do is our strategic plan. So when I joined in 2018, the strategic plan had just been passed. So 3 years later, and we launched the approach, we used the expectations of members from a foresight perspective to redesign the strategic plan to meet what they told us they wanted and needed, and then had the ability to go out and engage them in that process. We engaged our advisory group that used to be the House of Delegates. Here's what we think. What do you think? What do you want? What do you expect? We do one of those topics every single year. And one topic can be interconnected to multiple topics, but we purposely socialize, not just with the board and not just with staff and leadership, which you need all of that, but with our volunteer leaders to say, and AI is a great example. For the last year, the board has been engaging members around expectations. And now we're deciding how that informs our business decisions and what investments we make in this space. We did policies out, we have a few core principles, and now we're getting down to investment. All that required this level of strategic thinking linked to operational action by the professional staff, linked to financial support. You got to have strategy, how you execute it, and the money to do it, along with infrastructure and the talent. But all of it flows down to creating a high performance association. And my board would proudly consider themselves a future oriented, data driven, high performance board.
That's excellent. And I feel like one thing I sort of think I joked on a previous episode while I'm listening, sometimes I take notes to remember what people are saying and digest some of the points that really stood out to me. And one of the points that stood out to me that one of you said was yes, there are 50 drivers of change, and that might, again, just like AI, might seem overwhelming, but there's going to be those ones that are really important for your association, your board. And if leadership at your organization, like you, Jennifer, are aware of the drivers of change and invested in understanding them, then you potentially know which ones to bring to the board and say, okay, I've digested the 50 of them, here are the 24 most important, or maybe you distill it down to less than that, 5. You might say here's 5 that we really need to discuss at this board meeting, or here is one we have to talk about right now. It can't wait. We're going to have a special meeting about it. I'm just picturing at my former association when I would be at our board meetings, we often had that kind of thing where it was this is a topic that we all really need to talk about right now, because this is something that we need to prepare for as an organization. And sometimes board members would bring those, but often we as the staff were bringing those things and saying, hey, we need your input on these things, and being able to go back to this research that ASAE has already done to kind of pull from that and say, okay, yeah, these things we are seeing indicators of maybe this, or we could see how this would impact our members specifically, and then knowing which ones to like talk about maybe a little more in depth. And even if you don't talk about them all in depth, like having a sense that the others exist so that if you do run into something, you know where to go to get more information, because you remember, oh yeah, isn't there a driver of change about this? Like maybe I could go look at that because we're changing our content learning and knowledge approach, or we're exploring some new technology at our organization or something. So I just really, I love the interplay between you of like Andrea sharing with us kind of what is in these reports, and then Jennifer talking about these real world examples of using it. I know also, obviously this is something that is a continual process. So there's a continual stream of new research information that ForesightWorks is working on and sharing with the association industry. I think there's maybe some new drivers of change coming in 2025 as well.
Oh yeah, we're excited. So last year we released 5. This year we're doing to a different schedule where we're going to release 2 new drivers. But our first one will be released pretty soon, actually, in the next couple of weeks. And it'll be focused on private equity's growing reach. So what does it look like to have some consolidation based off of private equity, both impacting associations themselves, impacting the nonprofit sector in general, impacting the industries and professions that you represent, and also impacting even our industry partners. So there's a lot that's going on there. It's been going on forever. This is just introducing it into a new light, saying this will only continue to strengthen its impact over time. So we know that healthcare associations have been greatly impacted by private equity since there's been private money. So we're just looking to bring that into the forefront and for folks to understand what's going to happen to other associations and other industries. So be looking out for that one in the next coming weeks or so.
Excellent. Yeah, that one sounds fascinating for sure. I wonder if there's anything else that either of you would want to talk about or highlight from ForesightWorks, or anything that you would kind of say associations should be thinking about as we head into 2025.
I think my guidance to my colleagues and association leaders and their boards is the hardest journey starts with a single step. It takes courage, it's hard work. But start with what's my problem today? Because, as CEOs, we're incredibly busy. We have, my marketing team calls it mind share, limited time to do this kind of thinking, but it's really critical to the long-term viability of associations that we have this mindset. Start with, what problem am I trying to solve? Then go back and look at which one of these drivers, even in their short term, help inform what questions I, as a CEO, should be asking. I don't need to know the answers, but my responsibility is to ask the questions to my board, to my staff, to the members and market that I serve. But start with a single step, get educated on it, and lean in to the problem you're trying to solve. Because if you get to culture change and systematizing it, it makes the long-term change management process a lot easier. It's still hard, but it starts the association, and I truly fundamentally believe it is one of the most powerful tools for our future.
Yeah, not everyone's going to have a Jennifer in their organization. So not everyone's going to have, a standout champion. And that's okay. That doesn't have to be you. But if you're interested in this, I think it's something to look into, is to go ahead and explore the package that's already out there with the complete collection, if that's something you're interested in. But we do want to emphasize that that is taken in tandem with all the data that you're already looking at. So this is just another added pack. Maybe it's a starter pack to what you're already looking into. If you need more information, there's a free PDF about why associations need foresight, and it's a research brief that explains the concept of foresight. It offers tips on how to use the different drivers and demonstrates how you can do your own future focus scanning. So maybe ForesightWorks isn't necessarily the number one thing that you could be using right now, but how do you do it on your own? What does that look like? We also want to promote that as well. And then finally, if you're looking to grow a champion, or to identify champions, or to really help your association start to apply foresight to both your strategy and your operations, we do have several workshops and courses that we're going to be unfolding throughout the year that you can take part in to really understand and hone your skills and capabilities to become that stellar champion of foresight. So there's a lot that's going on there. And I know Jennifer is encouraging her fellow champions to take part in those conversations as well, so that you can use all the data available to you to ensure that you have longevity of your association and the profession that you represent.
The other I will say is there are a number of seasoned participants in the foresight journey that would be, we call them champions. We are mobilizing them to allow others to have conversations. And, as I started at the beginning, don't make the mistake I did. I'm happy to be raw and share what not to do so that others can accelerate their learning journey. And that to me is the beauty of ASAE and the foundation and the work we do together. And Kelly, frankly, podcasts like this. Let's share what we know, because in the end, as association leaders, our responsibility is to wake up every day and make the lives of our members and the sector we serve better. So even podcasts like this. So share with a friend, pass it on.
Yeah, I love that, Jennifer, making me get all warm and fuzzy about. I love that a lot. I agree wholeheartedly that I feel like all of us working together and sharing ideas really helps us all succeed better. And I also really like what you called out, Andrea, about helping people learn how to use stuff like this, because I feel like sometimes that's a skill that we take for granted or we don't realize is a skill that needs to be built. Maybe some people are more inclined to be ready to just jump in and know how to use this stuff. But I think it is important, that component of sharing the process of how you would operationalize and systemize using this type of thing so that it can become second nature. Because I think my recollection of being in associations was very much that sometimes I was just truly trying to keep up. It was the treadmill was on high and I did not really have the physical capability to be running that fast. So I was always at the very back of the treadmill, just trying to stay on the treadmill and not fall off. So it was hard then to kind of think about well, what obstacles should I prepare for in the future? Because I was just surviving to an extent. And I think when you operationalize that forward looking, or that process of getting data to help you, even though it feels like you might not have time to do that, you realize it in retrospect that once you did make time to do that, you were better prepared to do things, and you were increasing your stamina to not be at the back of the treadmill about to fall off. So I really like the examples you've both shared and kind of the mindset, Jennifer, that you've really shared throughout this episode. I really appreciate you both. I wonder, is there anything else? I feel like we've covered a lot of really good material here, and it's a lot for folks to kind of digest, and there's resources that folks can look into. I'll include links to the show notes to ASAE ForesightWorks and the PDF Andrea mentioned about kind of why associations need ForesightWorks. But is there anything else either of you would share?
Yeah, I just emphasized what Jennifer mentioned earlier. There are people out here who have been doing this for a while. So don't hesitate to connect with us. You can come through me and I'll make sure that you get connected to who can help you start your journey or who can help you continue your journey. And Kelly, you put it perfectly. It does take time, it takes effort, but that's what change is. And hopefully this can help you only enhance and strengthen your organization as you move into the next era of your association.
No, I'm just grateful to share the journey ASSP has been on in this space. And you're absolutely spot on, Kelly. If you do the hard work up front, then it may not make sense as to why, but over time it absolutely does. And it just becomes part of how business is done. And I'm grateful for the chance to share that.
Well, thank you both again so much for coming on the show. This has been a delightful conversation, really useful stuff to kind of think through as we head into the year ahead of us and beyond that. So thank you again both for coming on the show.
Thanks, Kelly.